emergency, please take your phone outside. Because this is a large meeting, we ask that you save just one seat for yourself plus one other. Now that the meeting has started, feel free to take any unoccupied seat. If you have a vacant seat next to you, will you please raise your hand so those still standing may find a seat? Thank you. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not engage any controversy, neither endorses or opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and to help other alcoholics achieve sobriety. I have said that I'm an alcoholic. Will any others present please raise your hands? Excellent. Not to embarrass you, but to get to know you at the coffee break and after the meeting, will any newcomers in their first 60 days of sobriety please stand and give us your name and your disease? Please hold your applause until after all newcomers have introduced themselves. Will the newcomers please stand and audibly begin on my left? Whitney. Jenna.
Wyatt, alcoholic.
Wyatt. Liz. Daniel. Susan. And I'm Josh. I'm an alcoholic. Are there any alcoholics visiting from outside the greater Los Angeles area? Will you please stand and give us your name and tell us where you are from? Anybody? Okay, locals only. Will the Al-Anons with us tonight please raise their hands? Cool. Welcome. Experience has shown that the AA program will work for any alcoholic who is sincere in his or her desire to stop drinking. The program for recovery is defined for us in Chapter 5 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and is titled How It Works. Tonight I have asked Will to read that portion of Chapter 5 in which contains our 12 steps to recovery.
Hi, I'm Will, and I'm an alcoholic. Chapter 5, How It Works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you've decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. Number 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed. and became willing to make amends to them all. 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10. Continued to take personal inventory. When we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will and the power to carry that out. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to the alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order! I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description to the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if He were sought.
Thank you, Will. All right, the format of this meeting is a 10-minute speaker, our secretary's announcements, a coffee and snack break, and our main speaker. Our first speaker for tonight is Nick.
My name's Nick. I'm an alcoholic. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for asking me to speak, Chris, and participate in my sobriety. I didn't know this was going to be filmed or on Zoom tonight. I wish I would have worn pants, you know? They're like, her eyes got big. That's crazy. No, I'm happy to be here, man. I am. My sobriety date, I'll just start off with that. It's September 15th, 2015. This year I'll have, God willing, 8 years of sobriety. And I just want to talk a little bit about, I'm going to touch very briefly on what it was like. So I came in on a nudge from the judge. I know my story's not that original. We all know how to drink. That's why we're here. I had a problem stopping, though, and I think a lot of people in here can identify with that. And just really quick to gauge the room, by a show of hands, how many people in here worked the steps all the way through to completion? Okay. And then as a result of that, how many people in here whose lives got worse as a result of working the steps? Anybody in here who's new, pay attention to that. That's 100% right there of people's lives improving as a result of working the steps. The only reason why I say that, I'm a little bit of a big book thumper. I believe that the solution is in the pages a lot more than it is in any other facet of this program. While there's a lot of benefits that I receive from fellowship and stuff like that, my recovery is within those pages, the first 164. And that's where it exists, and that's where it stays. When I sponsor guys, I do it how the Working with Others chapter suggests it, and I don't try to put my stamp on it or my flair on it or anything like that. My sponsees are not my buddies. I pick up the phone if the wheels are falling off. Other than that, they have a support group, and they have people that they can call in moments that are, therapy-based and stuff like that. I wasn't given that. I wasn't given therapy in here. I was brought through the steps, and that was it. And then I was on to sponsoring. And I'm here to tell you, like, sponsoring has been one of the greatest gifts of this program that I've had. I've brought, I think, 5 or 6 people through successfully now, and they have sponsees. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor who has a sponsor. This thing isn't original. None of this comes out of my head. I want to tell you a little bit about my experience with the steps, if that's cool. The first step wasn't a hard thing for me to accept because I burnt my life to the ground pretty well and good. When I came in here, I was willing. I was like entirely willing and ready. So there was no qualms with me, identifying as an alcoholic. But when it came to working the rest of the steps, that took a long time, man, because, after some time in here, life gets big again, and it gets fun, and people gravitate back in when you're trying to do the right things. And it took me 4.5 years of sobriety to finally buckle down and work all 12 steps. So I came in here, I was dry for the first 4.5 years of my sobriety. And anybody who doesn't know what that means, that basically means that I was in here, I was going to meetings and stuff like that. I was doing a couple steps here and there, but I would never work them all the way through. And as a result of that, I was dry. And I didn't experience emotional sobriety for a long time. So I think that's a serious gift and something not to miss out on is that the steps provides is true like confidence, not arrogance, true like self-assurance. And I could never feel anything like that without a reliance on a higher power. Without God, and I know that word for some people can be nails on a chalkboard. I know it was for me for a long time, but I found the right guy who kind of helped me, have a deeper understanding of what that could mean to me. The coolest part about this book, when I read it, it says, there's a portion in Bill's story that talks about, creating a conception of your own, and leaning into that, whatever it may be. And today my God continues to expand, it continues to evolve, it continues to change. And I wouldn't have it any other way, because I don't want to box my God up and make it something that I can understand or die on a hill for, because I think that shuts my mind off to greater spiritual experiences. And I kind of remained open-minded in that area for new things to gravitate in. But the first guy that I asked to be my sponsor, I was in treatment. I went to Redgate Memorial in Long Beach, and I was there for 4 months. And my first sponsor, he was speaking at Redgate, and he was just firing on all cylinders, man. He told my story. I heard my story in 7 different ways in his share. And by the end of it, he was all out of breath, man. He was like in this like preacher mode, and he got to the part of God, man, and he was just huffing and puffing. He was all out of breath, and he goes, man, if you got a resentment against God, he said, get the fuck over it already, man. And that just struck me, because it was something that I had never really decided to give a shot. I never necessarily believing in God wasn't the problem. It was believing that he was working in my favor that was the problem. That kept me at arm's length from people for a long time. And when he said that, it just resonated. And at that moment, I needed God, because I was getting ready to, remand myself over into custody a month later, in due time. And do I look like a guy that does well in jail? You know what I mean? Like, I'm cute, like, that's not for me. So when I was in there, man, I was 3 weeks into my sentence. I want to tell you about this, and this was my first experience that I had with like giving prayer a chance. I was 3 weeks into my stay, and man, we had bologna sandwiches every day for 3 weeks straight. Bologna with smoker snacks and little boxes of orange juice. And that was it. Day in, day out. That's all I had for 3 weeks, man. I had it, So I got down on my knees and I prayed right there at my bunk. And I said, hey, man, if you're real and you're working in my favor, give me anything other than fucking bologna today. 20 minutes later, a peanut butter sandwich showed up, man. It was the best fucking peanut butter I've ever had in my entire life. And I was sold from there. It was this little thing. I know that sounds hokey. I know that sounds stupid. But in that moment, man, I needed anything. I needed anything to feel supported. And that was enough, man. I was sold from there. And they would do AA meetings in there on the weekends. Every once in a while, somebody would come in, an H&I panel or something like that would come in. And I was right there at front of the line at the door. By the end of my stay, man, I was leading prayer circle. On the way out, I had a big book in hand and I was reading the pages. And, there were guys in there that I could tell were going to come right back in, just based on their physical appearance, just based on the lifestyle that I heard them talking about while I was in there. And I would try to like share the message to the best of my ability, not really knowing anything or having a concept of the steps yet. And I remember when I left jail in the first day that I stepped out, because if anybody that's been in there, man, like there's no color in there. The only color in there are the lines on the ground to walk a straight line. You got red lines, you got yellow lines, and that's it. The rest of the walls are gray. Everything is colorless. There is no life in there. It's lack of life in there. And when I got out, the sky had never looked bluer. The grass had never looked greener. And I remember having that true appreciation for life. And it was 3 weeks later that I got out, man. I was hitting meetings regularly, but I didn't work the steps. And I continued to not work the steps for 4.5 years. And as a result, man, I burnt my life to the ground sober. You can do that. I found out real quick, and it was in that moment learning the hard way. Alcohol is not my problem. I am my problem. They say in the book, we're sick. It's our bodies and our minds. I have a physical allergy to alcohol and stuff like that. But, if I'm not dialed in and I'm not working these steps and I'm not participating in the 12 step, my mind will go right back to that same type of thinking pattern, that same type of behavior. It may not lead me to a drink, but it'll keep you guys at arm's length because I don't want to get honest. I don't want to be real. I don't want to hold myself accountable. And when I finally worked the steps, during my 5th step, when I finally broke down and I told this man everything that was in my inventory on my 4th step, I finally dropped that rock. I don't know if you guys have read that book, Drop the Rock, but I experienced that feeling of like just this weightlessness, this gift of like, oh my God, I finally told somebody the entire truth. I had no skeletons in my closet anymore at that time. And I had a lot of heinous shit that I did and a lot of stuff that made me feel shameful. And after I told my sponsor certain things, he looked at me and he said, me too, man. Which made me feel a part of, and that's what AA did for me, man. It made me feel a part of. And when I was done with my 5th step, I was driving home and I felt like I had a new lease on life. I was finally seeing things. I was a little bit more aware of you guys. I wasn't thinking so much about myself. Somebody had ran out of gas that day on the side of the road. I pulled over and I went and I got them gas. That's something I would never do. You know what I mean? Like I would just never think to do anything like that. And I got 21 seconds, so I'm going to wrap it up with this, man. If you're new and you're kind of dragging your feet, it's okay. I've been there. Take your time if you need to. I don't want you to go through what I had to go through, which is finding out like, oh shit, I can be a piece of shit without alcohol. You know what I mean? I don't want you to have to experience that because there's no fucking excuses at that point. No excuses. So, if you're new, get a sponsor, work the steps, and just watch your life change as a result. And that's really all I got. Thanks.
I'm Dylan. I'm an alcoholic. Chris, thank you for asking me to come out and speak. Is this close enough?
Yeah. Your water.
Oh, yeah. This is actually really special. I was thinking about coming out here earlier, and and like what an amazing thing it is that we do, and showing up at meetings. And, there's like the idea of every one of us was out there doing what we were doing before, right? Thinking about how much darkness and destruction and chaos, and yet we're here, right? Trying to figure out how to be people. And what a tremendous undertaking, and what a huge task, because it is so much fucking work. It is so much work, and it's so worth it. So I'm 36. I got sober right before I turned 20. I was 19. It was April 4th of 2006, so I just had my birthday. And I think that makes me 16. My math isn't too off. 16 years sober. I have, I'm thinking about my life today and how not badass my life is. I'm a dad. I have a one-year-old. And so I've spent the last year and a month not sleeping. So I feel like an insane person on a regular basis. And he's got like 4.5 teeth, and then and so he's teething right now. For I don't know, other parents in here, I'm going to talk about being a parent the whole time, because that's all my life is right now. And so I was up like 3 times last night, just like holding my little guy. And I find it a little bit cheesy when people say this, but I know that the only reason I'm alive and the only reason I have this life today is because of the program, and how my sponsor taught me to be a person by the work we did through the steps and the relationship I built with my higher power, and his example. I just made a mess up here. I was getting all excited talking about my sponsor and just. So I guess I have some time, so I'm gonna. I grew up just up the street. Actually, it's funny. I grew up on the other side of the marina. I grew up in Santa Monica. I've never been to the South Bay. This is like, I was driving around. I was like, this place is fucking. Manhattan Beach is neat. I would love to live down here. This is great. I never went south of the marina, and so. Growing up, not like I was like, never left my neighborhood. There's nothing like that. I just, not like a tough guy or anything. I just grew up over there and kind of never came down here. I am the son of, I have a brother who's 5 years younger than me. He's gymongous. He's like this fucking mountain person. He used to be my baby brother. Now he's like this giant man. I have a kind of an odd family. My mom's family is all alcoholics. My mom's an alcoholic. My mom drinks at least a bottle of wine a day still. You wouldn't know if you met her. She had 7 brothers and a sister, and all of her brothers are alcoholics and addicts, and their dad and my grandma, everybody. They're from Quincy, from Boston, outside of Boston. They're also all bank robbers, and they're also all killers, and they all of them except for one have now died from the disease. I have 1 sober uncle, so one out of the 7 of them made sense of things, and my mom somehow. In all of that chaos, growing up in all of that, she was like a student. She was the second oldest, so I think she kind of like got out in time before things kind of, all those brothers, everything kind of like imploded. And she went to Wellesley, and she became a journalist, and she like put this life together outside of the chaos and the alcoholism and everything that comes with it. It's interesting, right? Because no matter how we sort of dress this thing up and what it looks like, what's going on inside is really what counts, right? So as much as my mom sort of was able to live like a different looking life, the undercurrents of all of that and growing up in an alcoholic family absolutely affected everything about how she lived her life. And so while she wasn't, running the yard at Corcoran or, hanging out in Pelican Bay to the end of her days like her brothers, she absolutely like lived that chaos. and carried that in such a different way. And it's interesting, right? Because no matter what costume it wears, alcoholism is a tremendous amount of pain and suffering, right? Like it's this initially like this amazing solution, but it ends up being such a chaotic human experience. So it's my mom's family. My dad's family, everyone makes movies. My dad was a producer for like 45 years. He just retired not that long ago. And his brother was, and my grandfather was a producer and a director and had a production company. They're all like really well, very successful people. But no, like all secrets. It's interesting, right? Like no alcoholism in my dad's family. But like I don't know anyone in my dad's family. There's no, everyone's so guarded and so like constricted and secrets and like everyone just like, there's just no soul or spirit or connection. My mom's family, like my uncles, I remember learning, I thought my Uncle Danny was in the Beach Boys when I was a kid. He was like so fun, and they're all, he's surfed, and he taught me to fish, and he was so much fun, and I was like, love Uncle Danny. And totally tormented, right? But like so much fun, and so like I always felt so loved by him and so close to him. My Uncle Paul, I don't fucking know the guy. I mean, I don't, on my dad's side, I have no idea anything about him. Never felt close to him. I wouldn't know he was my family. You would never know if he was my family, if he was in the same room as me, right? Like just no. And so there's like this confusing sort of like overwhelming love in my mom's family with all the alcoholic family, and then like this distance and this like kind of like this like coldness from my dad's family, but a lot of success, right? Like looked really good, but no love, right? And so my example as a boy in my family of what it was to be a man, my dad, growing up in that family, my dad has autism, right? So my dad's on the spectrum. Didn't know that as a kid, but as an adult, it makes total sense. My dad is the kind of dad who like, if something didn't go back, like a tool didn't go back into like the one spot that one tool went, he would lose his fucking mind. To this day, and like he's like so old he can't even use his tools. But he's like, "Did you put the fucking angle grinder?" I'm like, "Dad, you don't even know." I put the angle grinder. You don't even have an angle grinder. What are you talking about? Like, he's just so like angry. Everything has to be where it's supposed to be, and it's just. And interestingly enough, for my dad, autism and dyslexia, the man only reads. What a self-hating thing. Like dyslexic who only reads. That's the only thing he enjoys doing, right? Like what a confusing as a kid. Like my dad would be like, when I was a kid, no one taught me to read, and I taught myself to read. I don't know, whatever angry thing he said to me as a kid. And as a kid, I had this kind of angry, really wound tight dad who never had love himself or never experienced love. His biological dad took off when he was born. He was raised by someone else, didn't find out until he was an adult, the confusion of that or whatever, right? And being all spectrum-y and weird. My brother's also on the spectrum. Also angry and always wonders where his tools are, why isn't it back in place? But, and my mom is like this like very like loving but chaotic, very codependent, very anxious person. And as a kid, I've been thinking about being a kid a lot now that I'm a dad to a little boy. And I was a really emotional kid, like really like, when I think about like little me, I loved little me. I was like I was worried about animals a lot. Like I was always worried about, I was worried about I just worried about animals being taken care of. I was like, or I'd see people, I remember seeing people experiencing homelessness, like homeless people as a kid, right? And I was like, we should help them, right? Like these people need fucking help. I was a little kid. I was like, oh, like we should bring them to get food with us, right? Like I cared deeply, and when I would see suffering, or when I'd see things that seemed like, or when I saw someone hurting, I was like, I felt it so deeply as a kid, and I also like was kind of chubby and had a bowl cut, and so I was like this like really sensitive kid with a bowl cut, and I didn't know, I wasn't super aware of that, but I pretty quickly started to notice that that I didn't feel like I had quite enough like between me and the world. Like I was really affected by the world, right? And so I didn't really, I felt very subject to whatever was going on in my life, whether that was like the dog or like the homeless person or whatever. Like, you know what my friend was upset. I was like, oh my God, this is so like hugs. I was hugging everybody. The world's not like really into that. Like that was cool with my family, you know, and like, but people don't just want hugs from the chubby kid with the bowl cut. And and when I talked about sort of noticing that, like I sort of felt like my skin wasn't thick enough, is I didn't really feel. I don't know if it was safe. I mean, I could be real, like, you know, psychoanalytic with, like, you know, my mom's codependency and her anxiety and, like, trying to take care of my mom's stuff as a little kid. And I don't know if that, you know, set me up for alcoholism. It doesn't necessarily make me an alcoholic, but it set the stage for the need for some relief, right? I think just being me was painful as a kid. It's so funny because I was like a good kid. I like loved fishing I still love fishing. I loved fishing when I was little, and I remember the first time I like did something that felt like good. You know, like when we take our first drink. I remember the first time I felt like, oh my God, this thing was. I started stealing fishing stuff from Big Five, like really little, like 7. I don't know where I learned it. I like put stuff in my pants and walked out. I was like, oh fuck, like that thing, you know. And that wore off, and then it got so bad. I would steal stuff so much as a kid, and I was like really little. I remember putting a fishing pole down my pants and like walking out with a limp, you know. And I was like, I didn't have this on the way in. They're gonna know, and I don't know how they didn't fucking know. I never got in trouble. So I'm gonna blame Big Five for not catching me, and that's why I became an alcoholic. No, but it was stealing. I remember. Like sweets as a kid, like ice cream. I was like a cookies kid. I remember my first allowance, I took all my allowance and I went and got all candy. I spent it all on candy. My dad was like, you could save some. I was like, fucking, yeah, weirdo, you could save some. And I ate all the candy, and I got like that feeling, like I got like I felt, I don't know, it was exciting. I got this like rush from it. I got a little bit of reprieve from feeling so. Maybe I had like the secret, I don't know, but it didn't last long enough, right? And I remember when I first started drinking, my first time using substances, I smoked weed out of an apple in an alley with these kids. And oh my God, I was like a late bloomer. I think I was like 12. But I remember smoking that weed out of that apple, and oh my God, I felt like I was like I needed this like years ago. Like this is hope. Like I felt hope. I felt relief. I felt reprieve. I felt like a sense of peace that I did not have, that I did not know how to make sense of when I felt so worried about everything, or when I felt so concerned about like the plight and suffering of the world. I was a tortured little kid, right? But and I felt free from that. I felt so free from that. We're kind of near the promenade. I remember like seeing like half smoked cigarettes in the ground and like picking them up and like lighting a cigarette. I was like fucking. It's just like I was like, this is I didn't give a fuck for the first time. Like I didn't give a fuck. It was so. I remember hearing that in music as a kid. It was like. People like, I don't give a fuck. I was like, I give so many fucks, dude. I need some, I was like listening to Rage Against the Machine as a kid. I was like, fuck you. I was like, oh my God, don't, like, I'd get in so much trouble if I said that, you know, and, but I remember smoking. I was like, fucking, I don't care. I was like, I love that. I have a similar thing, like a similar freedom in my life today, which, it's because of these rooms and what we do here. But as a kid, I found a shortcut to it, and it was crazy, right? Because it was like smoking weed, and then I remember like this is crazy. I remember hitting my dust off, like computer cleaner shit. I found like my dad's computer cleaner. And I hit that, and I was like, whew. I better not tell anyone about this. Like, I was like, I don't know why that was my first thought. I was like, keep this, like, my precious. I was like, my dust off. I was like, what a crackhead, like, what a crackhead little thing to say, right? And to think. And it was that, and then it was drinking, and I just remember, like, I had hope, right? I was like, I have this thing to look forward to finally. And I started lying around that, you know, and doing anything to protect it. It was kind of like we do with our programs if we really things get bad enough, right? I would do anything to make sure that I could get high, right? That I could get my next drink. And if that meant lying, if that meant acting a certain way, I could be anybody I needed to be so that I could make sure that I had something to look forward to. And for some reason, I was a little kid. I was like middle school. It was like Friday. I was like held off till Friday. And the slippery slope of I remember, like, the first time I ever got high, like, on a weekday, it was after school. I was like, oh my God, like, I crossed a line, you know. I was like, what's happening to me? But, you know, but little by little, right, we do that, right? It's the progression of the disease, right? And I think it was like 7th grade. My first girlfriend broke up with me. This is super emo. It's going to sound super funny, but I'm a therapist now, right? So if I saw this, I'd be fucking concerned, like the red flags. But I was like this little kid, and my girlfriend broke up with me, and I was like skateboarding home from school, and I went and got these little Rite Aid on Wilshire. I got these buzzers, and I shaved my head, and it was like full Britney Spears, but like 10 years before, like shaved my head, and I was like, I remember like a piece of, you know, I could change how I felt inside getting high, but I remember like shaving my head, and then I felt different, and it was like a piece of armor outside too, right? So I was changing how I felt inside. I was able to manipulate how, and numb how I felt inside. And then I started putting these pieces of armor on outside, and I remember shaving my head. I remember my first pair of Dickies as a kid. It was like my first. I got like with my like I think I don't know where I had a little bit of money, and my mom would give me these shorts that were like above my little knee with my little chubby thighs, and I got these Dickies, and no one could see my chubby thighs, and I was like, fuck yeah, like. My chubby thighs are safe, right? Like I felt this sense of like, I didn't feel so fucking scared. I didn't feel so exposed, and it sounds goofy, right? But these little bits of hope, they saved my life as a kid, I think, and you know, I put on whatever costume it was. You know, it was like the pro club and the Dickies and like the little like angry tough guy thing as a little kid, and I was terrified, right? And I was so like desperately trying to find something that to make sense of how to be a person. And you know, I think my parents meant well, but they didn't really give me like they didn't have their own formula. They didn't have their own ethos, or they didn't have their own thing that they were sort of anchored to. And even if they did, I don't know if I would have heard it. I don't know, but my drinking progressed, and progressed to the point that when I went off to college. I played football in high school, and I went off to college to play football, and I got my last concussion, my 8th concussion. I was in the hospital, and like it's kind of like that movie Memento. I was like wiped clean. Like I couldn't remember where I got out of the hospital, and I like kind of like didn't know where I was. Like I had to peer places and be like, what am I doing? I look at my hands, like what am I holding? Like where? Like what's next? And I was like, fuck it. Like what am I like holding? I was holding it together for football. Football gave me a bit of an identity as a kid, and I lost football, and I was like, I'm going off the deep end. And you know, a week later, I'm smoking crack for the first time, and then it's just like free fall into that. And you know, it was. I did so many things, like, because it was never enough, right? Like, it's never enough. If we're looking for something outside of ourselves, I mean, some other thing than a spiritual solution, it's never going to be enough. And so I would just run things into the ground. Over every single thing I could find, I would do to excess, and it would like kind of scratch it just long enough to like, and in the process, I did so many things that I felt so much shame around, which then only perpetuated the need for more relief, you know, April 3rd of 2006, I hadn't really seen my family a whole lot. I had this like very wonderful hostage of a girlfriend, and And even she was like kind of done with me, which says a lot because she put up with everything. And she and my parents were like, hey, you need to get sober. And I went to, I don't know if people know about it, this program called Impact. It's in Pasadena. And it's pretty old school. It's pretty gnarly. I had no idea where I was, but it was at that point that they were like, you need help? And I was like, I do. And I remember when I walked in there, and Nick talked about this, and I at that point, it's funny, actually I haven't said my bottom out loud in a while. It's not that sexy. My bottom was, I hadn't seen my family, I hadn't really been around, and I broke into my parents' house, and I stole an envelope from my mom's room that said Christmas money. And I remember her handwriting, because I remember trying to kind of catching her, but then not wanting to tell her that I caught her, that I knew she was Santa, because she had the same handwriting as Santa as a little kid. And then I remember seeing this envelope with her/Santa's handwriting on it. And it said Christmas money. And I stole it. And I remember waiting for this dude Sharky. And I was sitting there like in the rain, like crying. You know, it was like pretty dramatic scene. But I remember sitting there and being like, I don't want to do this. And I couldn't not do it. And I remember sitting there holding it. I was like, I could go back and I could put it back in there. I could just like give this to someone who actually needs it. Like there's someone who's in trouble who could, I could do anything except for what I'm about to do, and I can't not do this. And I sat there, and he kept like shining me, and it was like probably an hour. I was like waiting, looking at this envelope, just like I can't not do this. And it was so clear. You know, that was December, right? So it wasn't a few more months until April. It was clear, but like not that clear. You know, but I. And that's not the darkest moment of my life, but it was the moment where it was clear that I was not in control. And I hadn't been in control for a while, but I realized in that moment I couldn't not get high. And so when they were like, hey, there's this thing you can do, you're going to go to rehab, I remember being like, yeah. And I had this idea. I was a little kid. I always thought like you just get chronologically older, and then you are an adult, and then things would make sense. Which is not fucking true. I don't know if anyone believes that shit. That is not true. But as a little kid, I was like, I'll figure this out somehow by just not dying, I think. And when my family was like, hey, you need help, and I remember being like, yes, I do. And I remember going to treatment. I remember waking up there, having signed like a 4 to 6 month contract to be there. It took me 9 months to get out of that place. Because I was very difficult. But I remember feeling a little bit of what I felt when I first got high, like a little bit of that, like, I think there's a chance. I remember my first going to meetings at first, I remember being like, oh my God, these people have figured it out. They know how to be people. Like they have this thing. And I remember watching people and mimicking people and repeating what they would say. And I remember like so desperately being like, I want to try this costume on. I was like, let's like this one. What you guys are doing. I want to do this. And I had like real hope that there was a chance for me. And my first, Nick talked about the sponsorship thing. And I remember my first sponsor, who is my sponsor again right now. My first sponsor was, so I was like, I'm like 6'2". I used to say I was 6'3". I'm like 6'2". And I was like 300, 310 something, bald. And again, not a tough guy, but I would fight fucking anybody. At any moment, anytime anyone looked at me weird, I was throwing a chair across. I was out of my fucking mind. And I remember my sponsor was this like frail, I think he was only like 5 years old, and he's like, I thought he was like old, and he was like this sage, but I think he was like 25. I remember meeting him at the time, well, because he walked with this like sense of like surrender, like he was at ease, like he was working the steps, and they were working in his life. And I remember like, I want the way you look like you are doing this thing, I want to feel like that. I want to do whatever you're doing, I want to do that. And he's like this like skinny. he was like a hipster before there were hipsters, you know, like I think he like listened to this like the Garden State soundtrack on like repeat kind of hipster, like back when, and he was a vegan, like the first vegan I ever met. I was like, fucking, there's that thing. And he was like balding already too, but not on purpose. You know, he wasn't shaving his head. He was just, that was what was happening up there. But he was so fucking generous, and he was so kind. And I remember I was like, I will do anything you say. He's like, oh, calm down with that shit. Like, you know, never say that to anybody, but I will work the steps with you. And I was like, all right, whatever you say though. And he was like, all right. And he got me, he was like the secretary at the meeting that I met him at. He's like, you have the cleanup commitment here. And he's like, you're gonna get a cleanup commitment at every meeting you go to. I was like, okay. And I realized that at the time what he was doing was he was keeping me from interacting with people, because every time I interacted with people it was problematic. And so he was like, now you have a thing that you can do where you'll feel valuable, right? And you'll be participating in your recovery, and you will not step on your dick every time you open your mouth. You know, you'll be busy away from people, you know. I did whatever he said, the best I could, and like whatever, some version of that. But I remember coming to him with things, and I was so desperate. Like I had this guy who you know, wasn't my big brother, it wasn't my dad. He was, you know, he was my sponsor, and like, you know, just absolutely. I feel, I say it to him every birthday, and I say it to him like pretty much every time I talk to him in one way or another, but that he saved my life. That his practicing the principles and the way he dealt with this like very problematic, very hectic young me, I couldn't have been fun to be around, you know. And he was so kind, and he was so generous, and the way he talked through the steps with me, and the way I worked the steps with him was so thorough. I felt like I had a chance, and I don't want to breeze over the impact piece of this, because I know this is an AA meeting, but for me, going to treatment very much gave me like the framework for how to kind of be a person as well, right? Like I was confronted with and held accountable for my behavior in a way that I had always gotten away with it before, and it was the first. I remember when I completed treatment, it was the first time, and I knew this to be true. I got a football scholarship, you know, and I did well enough in school as a kid, but I always cheated, and I never worked for football as much as like I just wanted to do the least and get the most out of things, kind of across the board with everything. And graduating from Impact was the first thing that I earned, because I didn't get away with fucking anything. And I remember, and this is crazy, right? Like I remember they made me dig my own grave, which is fucking unethical as all, right? Like, that's crazy. But I remember I was like, yeah, they're like, that or you leave. And I remember being like, give me a shot, and it was like digging this, and they like made me write on a fake gravestone. I had to write out the resentments that I was still holding on to, and I had to either bury them or get the fuck out. I remember like, I'm burying them. This is after like, you know, like weeks of not being able to talk because I had nothing good to say. It was one of those places, you know, but I felt so much like I felt so like I felt like it was like I earned it. You know, I earned it, and I saw that all the way through. It took longer than it was supposed to, but and I remember being like, I want to be a person again, and I remember like taking what I had learned there and, you know, in my steps, and like, I want to go back to school. And I went back to school. I did what we do here, right? I showed up at Pasadena City College. I showed up early to my first class. I showed up prepared. I knew what books we were using for that class, and I remember sitting up front and asking questions. It was probably real fucking annoying for that professor, and he tolerated me very well. And I would stay late, and I would do all the work, and I got my first A, the first A I'd ever earned. And you know, I talk about school a bit because my brain was pretty shot, you know, after the concussions and smoking crack and meth for a couple years straight. Like, it was definitely like on top of the brain trauma, was definitely, it was pretty problematic. And I had to work really, really fucking hard. And I didn't take any shortcuts with school, which I had never done before. And I felt so proud of that. And I remember transferring from Pasadena City College to Cal State Northridge. And it's funny, I went to this like really like snooty high school, and everyone went to like Harvard and Yale, and everyone's like senators and like these like business owners and shit now. And I remember getting to Northridge from City College, which no one did in my high school. And I remember being like, I fucking earned the shit out. I was like, I felt so proud of it. I never missed a class at Northridge, and I earned that, my undergrad degree there. I went to grad school as well there, and worked, showed up, and I got sober at 19. So my whole 20s, I spent sober, and my whole 20s were not nearly as sexy as other people's 20s. My 20s were school and work, and I couldn't focus that well. So I would work just enough to be able to afford going to school and my little car payment on my Corolla. And I never went on a vacation through my 20s. I never, there's a lot of stuff that people like got to do, and I just remember being like, this is gonna pay off. I know that working honestly and like just living my little life I'll get somewhere. I believe that. I have faith in that. And that's, my sobriety has been that way. Like, it hasn't been particularly flashy or sexy, but it's been earned and worked for. Nick talked about fourth and a fifth step, and I remember there was stuff on my first fourth step that I still have it. I didn't burn it like a lot of people do. I still have it. I can't believe that I said that stuff at 19 years old. I cannot believe I wrote it down. It almost like moves me to tears. I can't believe I had that level of courage and desperation as well, but that I was able to just sheerly out of pain and faith put down all of that, all of what I had been through, and all the stuff that I held on to, that I knew I was going to hold on to forever. And I had the same experience that Nick had, man. And 2 people tonight sharing that, right? I read that stuff out loud, and my sponsor didn't shame me. He didn't make fun of me. He didn't say everything that I knew everyone would say if they ever knew that stuff about me. And he said, me too, man. And I love you, and I'm so proud of you. And he put his arms around me, and I remember being like, I can't, if this is what happens when I do, my best thinking was to hold on to this stuff forever, right? And what I learned here was to do the opposite, and to lay that stuff out there, and not here. I'm not reading you my 4-step here. That'd be irresponsible, right? They really would. That's not safe. But with my sponsor, who had earned that, right? Who had very much earned my, a place in my heart, and who I had learned to, and grew trust with, and like that kind of boring formula for, trust is consistency over time, right? So if someone's consistently kind to you, there's a chance that person is kind, right? And AA is very behavioral, right? AA is not, it's very much about our actions, right? And I couldn't trust me as a kid. And I wouldn't expect anyone to trust me as well. I desperately wanted to be trustworthy. I desperately wanted to connect with people, but I was not someone who was safe to connect with, right? And I wasn't safe to connect with because I was doing anything in any moment based on whatever the situation at hand sort of presented. Whatever I could do to feel okay, whatever I had to say to feel some semblance of like whatever I needed to feel. And that was a different person in every moment. And the steps, I remember learning about honesty, and I was like, you tell the truth. You mean you tell the truth even if someone would be mad at you? And they're like, oh yeah, you tell it then. I was like, what about if you get in trouble? And they're like, oh yeah, you tell the truth then too. I was like, that's fucking crazy. There's no way I can do that. And I couldn't do that because because I was so afraid of those things. I was so afraid of consequence, and I had no way of tolerating the outcome of whatever being honest would bring. And the funny thing is, it happens to this day, because I am kind of stubborn still, but the very last thing I do is usually the thing that is scariest, and it's usually the thing that actually holds the freedom that I've been seeking the whole time. When I act on faith, I get there a little bit quicker, but for the most part, I am terrified, right? And alcoholism, in my experience, has been this like fear-driven, very inconsistent experience of my thinking, right? You know, alcoholism is in our thinking, and you know the difficult thing about that is, you know, when I talk to God, that also sounds like a similar voice, right? And it's hard to know what to trust or where to go with that, especially when I was new, with the chaos of being new. So what I always fell back on was the principles. And the principles of the steps were clear, right? And practice honesty, practice open-mindedness and willingness. And I remember being so afraid to die, right? I felt like I was going to die if I went out. And I was so afraid of that I would do it. I remember calling my sponsor, like, what do I do? He's like, tell the truth. I was like, fuck. And I would tell the truth, and it was okay. And it was uncomfortable, but it ended up being okay. And what eventually happened was I became someone I could trust. I became someone through those actions, based on the principles of the steps. I became someone who other people could rely on. And you know, I remember in becoming a sponsor, you know, Nick was talking about the greatest gift. I don't know if that's the greatest gift. Maybe for him, that's fine. That's cool. Being a sponsor is wonderful. In fact, it's you know, in being the 12th step, it's very much, you know, being of service is not limited to sponsorship, though, right? Like, my idea of being a service, it's funny, man. I remember getting a treatment, and you know, so talked about loving fishing. And I'm like just finishing building a boat, which is like, I couldn't have dreamt of that shit as a kid. But I remember getting onto treatment, and I remember taking my sponsees to fish for bat rays off the beach, which if you've never fished for bat rays off the beach, you're fucking missing out. That shit's super fun. Not sexy. There's nothing about it that's like impressive or cool. But I remember like bringing my sponsees, like, we're going to catch bat rays. And they're like, what the fuck's a bat ray? And I was like, you'll see. And they were out there at night after meetings, like, you know, running up and down the beach, chasing these stupid bat rays, but it was so fun. And I since I've been sober, and I had this as a little kid, but again, since I've been sober, I can't find a way to enjoy my life without bringing people along with me. And not in this like codependent, like I can't be alone kind of way. In this like, I have found something, and I want to share it with everybody, you know. And I was for sure that obnoxious new dude who like was like everywhere I went, I was like, have you tried being sober? People were like, what the fuck? We're at the grocery store, you know? Well, like, it's the best, you know? And I felt that way about Coke the first time I did it too as a kid. I was like, everyone should do Coke. Everyone's like, shut the fuck up, dude. But I felt that way about everything that I found in life. Like I you know, and I feel, you know, the life that I get to have, where I get to share things with people, you know, get to share this life with people, I get to share fishing with people, or I get to share whatever it is, you know, it's a pretty amazing thing to have a life where I actually have something to offer, you know, and so maybe being a sponsor is like way up there. But if you haven't fished for bat rays, then I don't know. I don't know if you have all the evidence you need to talk about the best things in life, but you know, so through working the steps and having these principles in my life, I grew this life that was mine, that I earned honestly, and it didn't mean that I was free from the chaos of what it is to live a human life. And I remember falling in love very early on, and then I also remember breaking up with that person, being devastated, and shortly after that breakup, her name was Devin. She was one of us. She was killed in a car accident up in Venice, and she was killed. She got hit by a speeding cop car. They're doing like 80 with their lights off up and down. They used to do that up and down Venice, and I remember. everything came crashing down. But what never stopped was showing up here. And I would show up here like an insane person, like weeping. People were like, all right, let's take Dylan outside. You know, but I just, the chaos of grief. I had never experienced loss, really. You know, and it's been, not that I feel like the Grim Reaper entirely, but it's been a pretty consistent theme in my recovery since Devin died. And, you know, learning how to not only stay sober, but learning how to feel and the pain and chaos of the impermanence of life has been a really big part of my recovery too. And you know, sponsees and sponsee brothers and godfather and one of my best friends for years. It's like a really like a deep and painful and pretty chaotic thing to be here, because you know to stay sober means you're going to watch people die, and no one tells you that when you're new, right? And to be able to walk through that and watch you guys and have your example for how to figure out how to be a person through that is, you know, I wouldn't have made it without the example of the people in the rooms. And you know, and now in this last year and being a dad, I like never wanted to. I work with kids. I work at this adolescent treatment program, and I never wanted kids. That was the best birth control on planet Earth, dude. Like a bunch of crazy kids all day long. Oh my fucking God, dude. I was like, there's no way I'm gonna have my own kids. And I remember, I remember when I met my fiance. I remember meeting her and being like, oh, I want to have a family with this human. We have about the same amount of time, and oh my God, I never in a million years would have felt qualified or in any way capable, and it's through like the communicating with her and what we've grown and the life we've grown together that I get to be a dad today, you know, and I absolutely would have never made it this far. I never would have had this life if it wasn't for the steps and your example and you guys practicing principles long enough to let me sort of settle here. If you are new, this thing works. You know, this thing works. It worked for Nick. It's worked in my life. It's worked in the life of that guy revving his fucking dirt bike out there or whatever. You know, it's it's pretty cool. And I don't really know how to convince anyone of this. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt in my life that that everything, as impermanent and painful as that can be, everything passes. You know, and as long as I hold on to my seat here, I have a chance at living a life worth living. You know, and that's, you know, I'm infinitely grateful. I appreciate you very much, Chris, for asking me to come out, for your friendship, and I hope you guys stick around and find out how big your life too can be. So, thank you.